I'm just going to kick us off. I just wanted to apparently we have sleet in Grove City as well. I wanted to just let you know that this is a project of Fair Districts Ohio, and we're a coalition. You'll notice that Dr. Reverend McIntosh is on here from the Council of Churches. We include, you're familiar, League of Women Voters and Common Cause and AFL-CIO and ACLU Ohio. And, we have been working all throughout 2021. We had opportunities for folks to create what are called community maps. And so they used a software called Districter. And this is something that Trevor Martin, who's on this call today or on the Zoom today, went through and kind of explain to people how they could draw their own community with the notion of, yes, there are requirements for keeping political subdivisions together, but we should also be thinking about, as much as possible, keeping communities together so that we have better representation. So as you know, we did these mapping competitions. So first of all, there was the state legislative mapping competition, and then we did a congressional mapping competition. And then in October, we had 3 winners of our mapping competition, and those 3 winners went through a process where we did webinars in October, where we heard from people and got insight into like what they thought didn't quite work, where they thought community boundaries were violated, and they went through this process. And, we're here today, of course, because at the end of the day, so much citizen engagement, but we didn't actually get terribly good congressional maps. And what happened is the Supreme Court, the Ohio Supreme Court said, hey, you need to redraw them. And so they said, you need to redraw them on January 14th. And, we've been in this weird holding pattern where we've been waiting. On the 26th of January, Rob McCulley, introduced, this is Senate Bill 286. And basically all that bill did is it said, hey, we intend to draw congressional maps. That's all. And so now we're just waiting. And it seemed really clear that we needed to let the state legislature know, hey, this isn't a way to do maps, and to provide a model. And so what I would like to highlight is there are folks that are here that were part of this process. The Fair Districts team includes lots of amateur map makers. And I'm really pleased Mike Ahern is here from Blacklick. He is somebody who has experience in zoning and is an avid redistricting reformer. He's somebody who helped me during 2017 in what we called petitions, when we were doing our citizens initiative on congressional map making. And then we also had insight from Jeff Wise. Jeff Wise won, he was a winner of the state legislative maps for Fair Districts. And so he provided a lot of input. We also, and I'm going to introduce the man who took the initiative, did a lot of the work. But I also wanted to highlight before I introduce Paul is that we did do a process where we use Dave's primarily, citizen map makers, we use Dave's. On the other hand, one of the things that the official map makers have said repeatedly is that Maptitude was much better, and that there were some things that didn't quite connect, or they weren't exactly the same. And so Sarah Andre from Common Cause, who's Common Cause National, went through and put the maps in Maptitude and worked to identify any possible splits or any possible complications. So this was, an iterative process of slowly taking those 3 winning maps, getting more public input, and then having a review process where we worked very hard to identify anything that might be unconstitutional. So that tells you a little bit about what this was like. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Paul Nieves. Now, Paul is an amateur map maker. Now, what's great is he's actually not an Ohioan. He's from New York. He has this strong passion for redistricting analysis, and he's part of the Princeton gerrymandering mapping. And so one of the things that I found really powerful this year is citizen map makers coming together to demonstrate to the official map makers that we can create truly representative districts. Now, Paul won. He came second place in both the state legislative map making contest for fair districts and the congressional map making process. And with that, Paul, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here. Good to see you all. I'm going to go over the map that I and others that Catherine just described put together to try to show what a fair map could look like for Ohio. So our goal in drawing up Ohio's congressional district map was to create a map with minimal partisan bias to the extent Ohio law and the state's political geography would allow. What you'll notice is that this plan has negligible partisan bias, meaning it doesn't unduly favor any party, according to the analytical measurements utilized in Dave's app. Incumbency wasn't considered. The population deviation was brought down to 0. And this model map plan encompasses a balance of compact, fair districts that ensures competitiveness and protection of communities of interest, including minority groups with minimal county splitting. So we'll compare this to the SB 258 map, which was struck down. You can see on the right, and then ours on the left. If you look at the ratings in this app, when you compare them, our model map scores better than the SB 258 map in every category. The biggest difference is obviously the proportionality, but it's also significantly more compact. Other bias measures like the seats votes curve indicate that this map doesn't unfairly favor one party. And while Article 19 may not explicitly call for competitiveness or proportionality for the congressional map, it doesn't prohibit it, and using this helps ensures that the map doesn't favor one party over the other. With a fair map, the number of seats to the winning party should be the same no matter which party wins. You wouldn't have that on a gerrymandered map. So in other words, if the vote total flips, the seat total would also flip. Ohio statewide outcomes are usually 54-46 in Republican favor, which would result in about 8 or 9 seats for Republicans and 6 or 7 for Democrats. If, for example, in a wave year, the results were flipped 54-46 in Democrats' favor, on a fair map, those seats totals would also reverse, which is accomplished in our model map, but not so with the 258 map. Normally, it would be 11 Republican seats or 4 Democratic seats. Comparing the declination, which measures the amount of packing and cracking, the model map has less than 1 degree in Republican favor. The SB 258 map is greater than 30 degrees, resulting in 2 heavily Democratic districts with some districts that would appear competitive, but would still mostly lean Republican. There are multiple competitive districts across the state that are likely to remain competitive throughout the decade, even with current trends. Districts 4, 9, and 13 have similar partisan leanings. Their composite scores average to 3.4% in Democrats' favor, while districts 10, 12, and 14 have slightly stronger partisan leanings. However, the highest is 8.2%. This is accomplished by combining large and small cities in their respective regions. For example, Toledo and other small cities throughout the Lake Plains in the 9th district, Dayton and Springfield in the 10th district, Youngstown and Warren in the 14th district. These keep these districts competitive, even as other parts may turn Republican. And on the other side of the spectrum, Union County helps to keep the 12th district competitive as the rest of the district trends towards Democrats. Should also note the 10th district, which is similar to the SB 258 map, is a bellwether district, meaning it matches the statewide partisanship. At a quick glance, these districts are visibly compact compared to the SB 258 map. Only 14 counties are split. Only 1 county is split more than once, Cuyahoga. Columbus, being more populous than a district's ideal population, is the only major city that is split. The model map, if this affects about 15% of the state's population. Meanwhile, SB 258 splits fewer counties, but it affects 19% of the population. If you compare here are the split measurements. If you compare the REOC and Polsby-Popper compactness scores, which one? You can, well, here we go, excuse me. You can see how much higher the model map scores compared to SB 258. These districts also follow regional boundaries to the extent practicable, with most consistent boundaries being census core statistical areas. Other aspects to determine COIs include fair district community maps from the Fair Districts Ohio page, state geographic regions, media markets, connectedness, and other areas with shared socioeconomic and ethnic geographic interests. This map also takes into account various metropolitan, regional, and rural planning organizations. These organizations administer federal transportation-related programs that congressional representatives from Ohio vote on. Aligning congressional districts with planning organization jurisdictions can better bridge the goals and objectives of Congress members and the communities they represent. Trying to adhere to all of this criteria can be very challenging, but luckily many aspects overlap. For instance, most of the 14th district is comprised of the Ashtabula and Youngstown metro areas, which overlap with the Youngstown media market. These areas have similar income levels, main industries, manufacturing, healthcare, and retail, as well as a major roadway, Ohio State Route 11, which runs through it from one end to the other. Also, the Eastgate Regional Council of Governments is entirely in the district. When it comes to minority representation, the 11th district is still drawn to elect, the 11th district can still elect a Black congressperson with a plurality Black voting age population. The 3rd district is now plurality white, and although it retains a mostly white voting bloc, it elected a Black representative when the district had a larger white voting bloc in 2012 and has since. Cincinnati's Black communities are kept within the 1st district, which also increases the Black voting percentage in that district. Most of the county and municipal splits are done to reach the population targets, and some others are done to keep communities together. If we go by region, you compare that, well, the model map and the SB 258 map, it's very obvious what's going on there. But the proposed SB 258 map, which was struck down, carves out a north central portion of Hamilton County and splits the communities of College Hill, North College Hill, Mount Healthy, Finneytown, and Wyoming. And in doing so, they split Hamilton County into 3 districts. The model map keeps District 1 wholly in Hamilton County, which has been a request echoed consistently and passionately by a number of residents in the area. The mostly Black communities to the north of Cincinnati are kept together in one district. The remaining portion of Hamilton is paired with Butler and Warren counties, as well as part of Claremont County, which results in a suburban exurban district. So you end up with compact districts in an area with similar interests. And this also creates a Democratic-leaning district in Hamilton County. If you go over to the Columbus area, Franklin County is split between 2 districts, 3 and 12. District 3 respects municipal boundaries and is now plurality white. The district keeps together the largely Black neighborhoods of Columbus. It includes most of Delaware County and Union County. SB 258 splits Franklin County from neighboring Delaware and Union counties. However, the Central Ohio Metropolitan Planning Organization is anchored in both Franklin and Delaware and is responsible for the transportation planning process in the 2 counties, which involves millions of federal transportation funds provided by Congress. And it advocates for environmentally and economically sustainable practices on behalf of the region in the state capital and in Washington, D.C. In the model map, the 12th district keeps Westerville whole and groups it with Genoa and Blendon townships, Minerva, and parts of Northeast Columbus. These communities are served by the Westerville City School District, Westerville Library, and Westerville Area Resource Ministry. If you go to the Cleveland area, District 11, again, a plurality Black district in Cuyahoga County, that keeps together the county's mostly Black cities, while most of the remainder of Cuyahoga goes into the 4th district, which also takes in all of Lorain County. And this area is no longer cracked as it was in SB 258, and there's still a competitive district there. In the SB 258 proposal, Cuyahoga County is split into 3 different districts with both eastern and western portions of the county in separate districts that sprawl over several counties. Our model map keeps the city of Cleveland and eastern Cuyahoga contained within one district, while pairing the western portion with neighboring Lorain. A small section is included in the 13th district. Every district has to have one whole county, if it could, which pushes another district into Cuyahoga. Western Cuyahoga County is more closely connected economically and socially to nearby communities, including those in Lorain. In the Akron area, districts 13 and 14 are competitive districts. The 13th is mostly in the Akron metro area, including Portage and Summit counties, as well as most of Geauga and a small portion of Cuyahoga. The 13th heads into Geauga in order to keep Stark County whole, which was something frequently expressed on the Fair Districts Ohio Community Maps page. The invalidated SB 258 map had not only split Summit County from Portage County, but also divided Summit County itself. The area has a large and comprehensive transportation system that is anchored by two public transit agencies, Metro in Summit County and PARTA in Portage County. Eastern Summit and Western Portage also share a number of universities and hospitals. In the Toledo area, the model map brings in all of Wood County and cedes the more rural Northwest counties to the 5th district. It remains a competitive district that better respects the Lake Plains communities. Coming down to the Dayton area, District 10 is a compact and competitive district, mostly in the Dayton metro area, all of Greene and Montgomery counties, as well as Clark County going up to Springfield. It is actually almost identical to the SB 258 map. So it's clear they can draw good districts that respect the communities of interest. The eastern portion of Montgomery County and western Greene County have much in common: a school system, park district, library system, and other services. And Beaver Creek is the largest city in Greene County and is rapidly growing. It shares an economy and workforce with Montgomery County, which is largely dominated by Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and Wright State University. Looking at the remaining geographically large districts, District 2 is mostly in southern Ohio. District 5, a large rural western district that keeps together a lot of the small cities and rural areas. District 6 stays in Appalachia. District 7 is the north central Ohio district, including some of its small cities to the west of Canton. And District 15 is the central Ohio district. Overall, this district plan is proportional, compact, and respects communities of interest and creates new competitive districts throughout the state. Oops. Can everyone hear me? I can't see anything.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Do you have anything else you wanted to add?
I have, no, that's the core of what I wanted to say and represent and make sure people got that.
Well, this is a good opportunity. My guess is that you have many kind of different questions about this. And so this is the point where if you want to throw questions into the chat, I'll then start calling on folks. You can also, it's hard necessarily to see you all, so just throw your name in the chat and I'll call you out. Or if you want me to ask, all right, Jim, Province, please ask your question.
This is specifically for the Toledo area. It looks like you've got Bob Ladd in the same district as Marcy Captor. Was there any effort to look at incumbents and try to keep them in their current districts? And also, I didn't catch what the partisan breakout is supposed to be with this map.
Sure, let me go back to that slide. There we go. I did not consider incumbent locations or trying to protect incumbents and trying to draw this map or any of the other maps that I draw. That's just to be, blind in that sense. It's a little more Democratic leaning, but it's fairly even. If we go to this one here, you can see the composite scores. It's almost an even district still.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the partisan breakout for the entire map.
Oh, for the entire map, I'm sorry.
That one.
Is this?
It's a slide right before this one. Oh, maybe not.
Yeah, I would share the one with the table, Paul.
There we go. So Paul, could you walk him through
Sure.
like how do you look at this? How do you say, hey, these are Republican districts, these are Democratic districts, what are competitive districts?
Sure. It'll highlight what district is strongly leaning in one direction or the other. So the 1st, 3rd, 11th are solidly Democratic districts. Meanwhile, the 2nd, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and the 15th solidly Republican, a solid Republican column. The remaining that don't have a highlighted margin here would be considered competitive. So there's a 3-point margin in the 4th district, 2 points or so in the 9th district, about 7 in the 10th, about 8 in the 12th, 3 in the 13th, 5 in the 14th. So there are a lot of competitive districts in different regions throughout the state, which was something that we were trying to do to make sure there was no partisan bias in one way or the other. It helps with proportionality also, but we're trying to find a balance of all these things to get no partisan bias, which can be tricky trying to also follow the state law on splitting.
Jim, do you have a follow-up to that?
No, that covered me. Thank you.
Okay, so Jesse Balmer, you're the next batter up.
Yeah, that was a little bit my question. It looks like maybe like a 9-6 or even with that 9th district, maybe like a 10-5 map. So I guess my question is an 8-7 map possible with all the other rules that you're looking at as far as splitting?
This was because again, this was a group effort, and if you look, we're trying to get this down to 0. So like an 8-7 map the other way is achievable under the right circumstances, but to bring it down to 0 partisan bias would still slightly favor Republicans, because Republicans do better than Democrats in the state. Does that answer the question? I don't know if that was clear enough, but
Jesse, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I just imagine like whether a strictly proportional map argument is going to come up, and I was trying to get a sense of whether you feel like that is doable.
I can't really say if it's more doable. I don't know if someone else would want to speak to that, but
Yep. Paul, if you would
yes.
show the slide that has the red and blue squares on it.
And folks,
Yeah.
Jeff Wise of Cincinnati, who is part of, he was a winner of the state legislative maps in our mapping competition. And Jeff, what do you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so this is the Republican proposal here, and you see they push down the Democratic vote in enough seats so they get, you know, close to like a 12-3 split. But if you go to the model map on the next slide here, it really is close to 8. I mean, there are 7 blue seats as far as being above 50% Democratic on a 2-party share, and there are 8 red seats. So that really is proportional. If every district that was exactly, you know, above 50% +1 would go Democratic. In reality, the toss-up districts, they can kind of go either way. So if you calculate that, maybe, you know, some years a little bit more than 8 would go Republican, a little bit less than 7. It really depends on the quality of the candidates. But on average, if you look at this map, it's really close to proportional in terms of the expectations. You've got 8 red and 7 blue there.
Jesse, anything else? Any other questions or a follow-up?
No, I'm good. I'll let someone else ask a question.
All right, Josh, you're Josh Raltenberg. It's your turn.
All right, Catherine, this is more for you and the voting rights groups, and maybe I'm the buzzkill here, but what makes you think that the General Assembly or the Commission is going to pay any attention to this map, considering how previous maps were drawn and redrawn on the legislative side and the congressional side the first time around?
So one of the things that I think is really challenging, it is challenging to be hopeful about a process when things went so poorly in 2021. And certainly the map making, you know, the remapping of the state legislative districts by the Ohio Redistricting Commission was, let's put the process at less than transparent, and with a product of maps that just were not reflective of proportionality of, you know, the state of Ohio, or it wasn't representationally fair. And I do think, you know, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. But what I also know is that Ohioans changed the Ohio Constitution twice. They expect better. They expect that the Ohio Supreme Court will step in, as they did, to hold the map makers accountable. Now, I think we need to be really, really clear that we are not going into this, you know, naive Pollyanna-ish we want very clearly to provide a model map in a transparent way, so that we can show the map makers that this is a way they can actually do it. And not just that, to provide them something that they could actually start with. Now we have to assume, they're doing all sorts of things behind closed doors and we don't exactly know what's happening and they'll rush it through the process. But voters deserve better. And we can't just, wave our hands and say, oh, well, this is just the way, this is the way it is. We changed the Ohio Constitution and they don't change anything. That's it. And wring our hands. No, we're trying to improve this and to encourage them to do better with the congressional map making than what happened with the state legislative remap. Follow up on that.
That works for me.
Okay. All right, Jonathan, it's your turn.
Hi, thanks for having me today. Josh already touched on a bit of what I was going to ask about, but looking at the GOP majority in the state legislature, and just frankly that you're going to be passing this map off to a body that likely has a interest in not drawing a fair map, what is the ceiling for progress right now versus what would be ideal? Like what should be realistic expectations for people in favor of this redrawn map?
So I think that the reason that we wanted to make sure that we put this model map out is it deprives the state legislature or the leadership of the excuse that a good map isn't possible. One of the things that they said throughout is, oh, there just aren't any other constitutional maps, or, oh, we had to do this, because of XYZ, some kind of excuse. We went through this process, not just using Day's redistricting app and a process where we accepted public input and tried to get as much information as we could, but also doing analysis using the tool that they're using so that we could do apples to apples comparison and identify any possible problems that they might see. And so we just are tired of excuses. And this model map is a way simply to say, no, you can do better. And here is one that, people in your community, map makers, when we think about the Princeton gerrymandering project, there are so many different ways to come up with good maps. This model map is a way to say, hey, do better.
Thank you. I just had one follow-up question. For people in your position, how frustrating is it that you don't see a broader federal ban on partisan gerrymandering, and especially with the Voting Rights Act seeming stalled for now? Just how personally frustrating is that for you that there can't be help from above?
So I look back and I think about Russo v. Common Cause, when the US Supreme Court said that they just didn't have any role in partisan gerrymandering. We are facing challenges and problems here with our map making in Ohio, and we have good rules in our Ohio Constitution. There are so many other states that do not have good rules. And so it's incredibly challenging that the US Senate can't get it together to pass rules that prohibit partisan gerrymandering and focus on making sure that there's fair map making, not just in Ohio, but all over the country.
Thank you very much. And one very last quick follow-up, then I'll be done. I noticed that in the redrawing of the District 13 Ohio House District 13, that it removed Wadsworth. And I was just wondering if there was any quick explanation for that.
Paul, do you want to jump in, or?
I'm sorry, in the bottom left, you mean?
Yeah, I'm looking at yeah.
It was, there are things like that throughout the map. Trying to get down to zero means some parts are going to be split. It was, there's some trade-offs with whenever you're drawing these districts. So the main thing was to try to keep as much of the Akron area in 13. The 4th district had to take all of Lorraine. There was a remainder left over in Cuyahoga, and so in order to keep the Mahoning Valley together and then going up to Ashtabula, that area, 13th was going to have to go up into Geauga and then the Cuyahoga portion, but that would be too many people. It was just, it was just a decision to make it affect as few people as possible.
Thank you very much.
Well, and I think we have a question from Shane Stegmeller. Shane?
Hi, thanks. Sounds like we're going to get a new map from the Republicans on Monday, and that they're going to maybe try and pass it out of the legislature next week. What's your expectations for the process? Do you expect anything different? Are you kind of suspecting this is going to be just the same repeat as last time, where they just suddenly pass a map without like really any input, or just kind of overall concerns and what you expect?
So I am hopeful that they will go through a process that is more transparent than what happened when the Ohio Redistricting Commission went through and did the state legislative maps. The legislative process, traditional legislative process has built into it, some, public hearings, committee process in both chambers. I think it'll be tight, and I always want more information. I think one of the biggest challenges for anybody who comes to those hearings, has to do with the inability, for example, to see the maps they're actually looking at the same time. One of the things we'd really like to see is committees actually have monitors so we can actually see what it is that the committee's looking at, what are legislators actually looking at, and they could significantly improve the process if they walked into this, let's say with different motivations. One of the things I know about this map is a lot of hard work went into this map, and that if you set out to make a good map, you can actually do that. And so what I'm hoping is that they're approaching this more openly, especially since their map, the state legislative map, was immediately really challenged, the one that was created by the Ohio Redistricting Commission. Any follow-up to that, Shane?
I don't think so. I mean, do you have any concern that, if they can't get any Democratic support on this map, that they're just going to try and kick it to the Redistricting Commission, so they basically do what the commission did with the General Assembly maps?
Well, it does become problematic because we're all being really thoughtful about the primary coming up and the filing deadline. We're talking the time frame is super tight, especially if it ends up just being kicked to the Ohio Redistricting Commission. If it does, then they have an additional 30 days. So people are thinking, oh, well, we get 10 days out from here, it'll be all over. No, if they don't actually get buy-in from enough folks, including at least a few Democrats, then we are talking about it going to the Ohio Redistricting Commission. I do think it's very possible that the map will end up at the Ohio Redistricting Commission, and we've identified the ways that it didn't work, and so has the Ohio Supreme Court, and we will go through a process where we'll encourage them to do much better. Right now we're really focusing on the state legislature, but we definitely have our eye on the Ohio Redistricting Commission as the possible next step.
Thanks.
All right, Shane, any follow-up? All right,
Nope,
and then we
thank
have
you.
something from Cheryl. Cheryl says, even if they don't look at this map, doesn't submitting a compliant map support any potential court challenge? I think one of the things that's very important here is that any of the maps are really drawn for Ohioans. They're drawn for voters. We're really focused on making sure that we have really good maps that are, that are not, manipulating votes. We're very focused on that. And of course, we're hoping, as the state legislature tackles this challenge, that they will be very focused on the voters rather than on partisan interests. I do think that maps were essential for the court challenges, that in fact, any map that we have isn't just for our legislature or just for the Ohio Redistricting Commission. It's also possible there will be ongoing court challenges, and we'll see. How's that? But it is important to have good maps out there that challenge the notion that the legislature just couldn't do any better, or the Ohio Redistricting Commission just couldn't do any better. And then we have John Cossack.
Yeah, Catherine, just remind me again the bar that needs to be hit by the legislature for this not to end up before the redistricting commission.
Okay, so they'll need to pass this. I think the thing that's important that becomes a little bit complicated is that if they need to pass this with an emergency clause, meaning they need 3/5 unless they add an appropriation. And so as you're thinking about this, you're talking about you're talking about super majority of the state legislature to actually pass the congressional map from the state legislature. Anybody else want to add a follow-up on that?
I've got a couple other questions.
Go for it, Josh.
Two questions from me. So the filing deadline came and went yesterday, and whoever wanted to run had to say that they wanted to run, as far as the legislative districts are concerned. However, there could have been candidates that chose not to file because they haven't seen the districts, or maybe they don't know if they want to run yet because they haven't seen the districts, even though the filing deadline has passed. Do you think that could raise a future court question?
So one of the things that we know is whenever there is confusion or uncertainty or things are not exactly clear, of course there is the possibility of court challenges. We're in this weird situation where people will ask, well, what's going to happen next? And so many of us are like, well, we don't exactly know. They've made the rules loosey-goosey for the, candidates for the Ohio House and Ohio Senate. They can, when they filed, they didn't exactly know what districts they will have. How can I say, that lack of clarity can, of course, lead to lawsuits.
Okay, and the other question I had was, even though I believe the legislative reform says that the court can't take the process away from the commission, I was speaking with a legal analyst the other day who says if voters didn't envision this when they passed the reform, the court could have the ability to act on that, even though it's what voters passed. At what point do you think the court should take this process away from the legislature and the commission when it comes to drawing maps?
So I should highlight that I am a social worker, so my background is not legal. What I do know is voters deserve to have good maps, and that means that at the moment it's not exactly clear what is going to happen as how can I put this? We have to redo these maps. Are they just done ad nauseum, or do we in fact expect at some point the courts will establish a map maker to help them? It's not exactly clear what will happen, and I hate to guess.
Fair enough.
Oh, I was going to say that Suzanne Almeida is on from Common Cause. Suzanne, did you want to weigh in on that?
I don't, because I think we don't have enough information yet, right? We're not at a point where I think that we know whether the court will need to step in, and we're not at a point where we know under what circumstances that could potentially happen.
All right. Any other questions?
I have a quick one. I guess this is parochial for Cincinnati, but would you need to draw a Democratic district in Hamilton County to kind of hit the numbers that you need to hit? And then just follow up, are there other parts of the state where you see gosh, this really needs to change to hit a constitutionally valid map?
So I'm going to hand this off to Paul. Although Jeff is from Cincinnati. Jeff, it looked like you were ready to say something.
Yeah, I knew that.
Yeah, Jesse. I mean, we tend to look at it overall. So in this map, the congressional map, I mean, the areas are big. It is not hard to get the Republican to Democratic split correct. And actually, there are many different maps that we looked at. If you look at the FDO winners, there are many different approaches to getting the splits to be reasonable. So there weren't really any areas where we were constrained from the partisan balance standpoint, say we got to shoehorn this in so we get the right RDD balance here. That was not the case here at all. In fact, you know, we are more focused on getting the communities together, and the partisanship pretty much fell into place where you wanted it to go, which is different than the state house maps. The state house maps, there's so many constraints, there's so little areas, it's a lot hard to get the proportionality you want there. But for the congressional maps, it was a relatively easy exercise for the partisan balance.
Paul, are there things that you want to talk about? Are there areas of the state that you thought for proportionality, it was necessary to change the map that was approved in November?
Well, there are a lot of areas in the state, yeah. Jeff covered it well, including Cincinnati, but the other Columbus area district could have been done better. If going north into Delaware County, which was spoken of, maybe suggested in the majority opinion. The 9th district, moving some of these districts closer to the middle overall helps the proportionality of it. Getting a few more even districts throughout the state. You have one in the 13th on the SB 258 map. You know, we still have that 13th there, but then there's another 4th district, which is also has a similar partisan leaning. Trying to make these districts competitive also can help in making it more proportional, as opposed to having many of them leaning one way mostly, and then maybe they could flip in a wave year.
So this is one of the questions that popped up for me. So Paul, what you're saying is that by creating things that are more, you can do both things that are more competitive and things that meet that proportionality or the representational fairness.
Yes, that's precisely, yeah. And that's what the model map accomplishes. In fact, if we go back to this measure, you know, you can see the proportionality goes up a lot, but so does the competitiveness. Even if it's a little bit, it's still an improvement, and you can accomplish both.
All right, well, any final questions from folks? Well, I wanted to thank you all for joining us, and I, for one, am looking forward to next week when the official map makers unveil their map and we begin having hearings. And with that, thank you all for coming, and I wanted to say a big thank you to all the Fair District friends that are here, and work so hard on this map. And I look forward to ending gerrymandering, and this is just one additional step. Thank you all.